Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Hello, everybody. This is Marco Ciappelli with Redefining Society Podcast on ITSPmagazine. And I got to say that lately I get more interesting topic suggestion and guests than what I can actually handle. I'm going to have to start giving it to some other host on ITSP Magazine, but I wanted to keep this one for myself because it's right at the core of what I like to talk about, which is artificial intelligence, technology, and humanity. And to talk about this from what I think is going to be a very interesting angle, because of the background and the story we're going to hear, is Chuck Rinker here. And it's with us. And stay tuned because I think it's going to be interesting. Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it.
So I'm not going to go too much into what we already talked before start recording because I want that to be your leading to the conversation. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your unique story into technology, how you got into that.
Wonderful. And I appreciate it. I think it's going to be intriguing today. I'm really excited about having this how society and technology merge from your perspective. So I think I'll learn as much from you, if not more from you today, than you'll probably learn from me. But the background on how we got here is I actually grew up a cattle farmer up in Virginia, up in the mountains, urban, small town, good old, American working class a family. Grew up with some pretty strong ethics, very strong parents that were really supportive. And they started pushing me to play on some of my math aptitude and to get me from being a cattle farmer to something that they thought would be more conducive with the type of interest and intrigue I showed up. So we were lucky enough to be outside of DC. So where this really comes to is as I got more and more into the DC community, of course, everything from Black Ops military to growing up in the early days of when gaming was just becoming commonplace. People don't realize back in the days, we represented football players by red blips on a screen, not by the photorealistic renderings and all we got today. But that really plays right into the heart of what we're talking about when we say, what's it mean to be human? What's it mean to have personality? Is even back in those days when I was playing the LED football games, to me, I could see a quarterback in my head. I could see the blockers out front. And we were playing these games just as engrossed, just as intrigued and infatuated as if you had, your full VR headset on your head. So your brain's very powerful. Your brain, as you know, has an imagination that people don't give it credit for. And so as we moved in more and more into some of the new technologies of when I first started, I was doing ticker tape for those old school guys. You'll see me on camera. I'm not a young spring chicken anymore. We were punching holes in paper tapes to communicate data to the computer. Then we had the teletypes, which were basically typewriters with no screens. Then we had screens. Then we had color screens from green screens. Then we got more and more. So there was this evolution all the way through the mouse and now voice first. And there's an evolution in my mind to now we're approaching that ability to recreate human personality and how we handle that from an ethical standpoint, from a practical standpoint, and technology standpoint, of course, is as you say in your podcast, it's not something that's 10 years away. That evolution I've talked about from cattle farmer to human AI is not something we're waiting for 10 years. We've been delivering practical application. People are using this. This is part of our daily life. And I really kind of feel like it's time to open up the conversation and make sure that we're using it for the, I won't say right purposes, but let's call it for the benefit of all.
I welcome that, as that's kind of like my mantra. I keep saying this all the time. Now, I love actually a couple of things that you said, because I'm not in my 20s either, and I consider myself really lucky actually to grow up with the analog technology and then being right there for the transformation in digital. And I go back to the radio, I go back to, TV, and I go back to the earlier computer where, we were using it. You mentioned, like, yeah, my first video game, it was it was a ball bouncing between two little bar, right? Tennis, ping pong, or pong, or whatever it was called. And to see where we are now, it's blows my mind. I mean, we're talking about things that we can actually chat GPT and have an artificial intelligence that is doing. I don't think it's that intelligent. I think it's more of a marketing push on that. But we're getting there. There's definitely machine learning, right? I think you would agree with that. But you said something, and that is using our imagination, right? I mean, it's like you read a book, and many people say it was better than the movie because you made it the way you wanted it to be. So I think you said that. I don't know if I'm misinterpreting that, but let's elaborate that a little bit more. So what it means to be human, maybe, and what it means the imagination in all this picture.
Yeah. As a human, I'll start there. And like I said, I don't have the formal background you have in some of this discipline. This is where the fun begins, Marco. Because to me, when I've engaged millions of people in football games and gaming, like I said, I did the Madden NCAA football franchise prior to starting this company, and now we're moving this towards some of those benefits we talked about. How do we use these digital personalities for clinical trials? But in order to get that, when we say we need to bring the human element, and I'm not dissing any of my competition, but a lot of people focus on digital humans. That's a term Gardner's using all over the place. It's part of the hype cycle. A lot of the people in this space are saying, oh, we're creating digital humans, we're creating digital humans. And it leads to something we call the uncanny valley, which is kind of that sense that us humans are so engrossed with what it means to be human. And we'll get to answering your definition directly here in about 30 seconds. But we've gotten so engrossed with this concept of what it means to be human, and we're trying to replicate humans and think that that's how we make something that's more human. And that's entirely in my mind the wrong approach. And I play homage to the great Walt Disney and say he was the original creator of virtual reality, not Facebook or who. The whole reason he created the whole Disney empire and Disney World and theme parks and the videos was when you talk to he led you to believe that a skunk had a personality, and that if it died, you cried over a deer or a skunk or an animal or an inanimate object, and you had true emotion and feeling. You had a human bond. You had a human connection with those people, with those personalities, let's say. So when I think of what is human and why our flag, our mantra is digital personalities for the workplace, is I want to know what makes Chuck Rinker, what makes Marco. It's not everything about your beard and you wearing glasses. It's your demeanor. It's how you react to something. It's the culmination of your life experiences that cause you to not only, to be blunt, look at the aesthetics you might hold, what your values are, how you respond to certain situations, how you respond to stimulus around you. And at the end of the day, reality is the 8 inches between your ears is your reality. And so that is what it means to be human, is what is your view of the world, everything from values, demeanors, personalities, vocabularies, languages, aesthetics, cosmetics, the physiology, the physicality of your being is what it is human. And we spend so much time trying to create digital humans that they become creepy, they become this uncanny valley, and we lack the stripping that away and creating something that we're comfortable communicating with, something that we will trust, like these Disney characters I talk about, something that can express empathy and emotion, something you can create an emotional bond with, and that gets you to react in how we would as humans, not just simply trying to create somebody down to the hair follicle and then using it for the wrong piece. So you alluded to, so that's my definition of what it means to be human. So when you alluded to ChatGPT and the machine learning piece, we use a lot of that, and not ChatGPT, but machine learning, but we actually take, I'll call it more of Microsoft's definition of active learning. We're not trying to teach these things to be their own sentient beings and act in a truly autonomous way. We're using the AI, we're using speech to text, natural language parsing, all these IoT technologies that we talk about, language understanding, the ability to speak 148 languages. We've developed our own sign languaging piece so we can communicate with the deaf community. We have a couple of members on our team from the deaf community. And we've built all these tools not to automate humanity, but to build a communication pipeline that you and I are comfortable with. 2 billion years ago, if I wanted something, I'd point to, some food on a tree and grunt and go, and that was communicating. I know that's a little goofy, a little geeky, but that's how you communicate.
It's true.
Yeah. So we're going, why are we trying to, humans have spent 2 billion years learning how you and I will form a bond, the gestures I can make now, the eye movements I can make. And that's where you're either going to learn to trust me or not trust me. I'm going to be empathetic to your thoughts or not. And that's the human bond. And that's what we're trying to embrace with PRSONAS, not let's replace humans.
So I love a lot of things you said, and the reference to Disney. I'm a big fan of Disney. I'm a big fan of storytelling. So how can you not look at what is done? And then you mentioned a few things that I agree with you. Again, it's recreating humanity. When you play creator, it's something that always scares me. Every bad sci-fi movie or book end up bad because of that, right? So it goes out of control, right? I mean, it's good in storytelling. It works in sci-fi. I don't want it to work in our society. So I like the approach, and I always say that, AI, advanced technology is, for me, it is a tool to enhance maybe our communication and ourself. It's a robotic arms. It's a small robot that goes into a cave and finds something so nobody risks their life and they are, good in the environment, whatever it is, but they're tools. And I think that that's also part of your message, meaning why are we trying to recreate or pretend, because we're far from recreating that, and I hope we never get there. So what's your approach to that, not only because of what you do, and I want to go a little bit more into these personas that you're creating, mm-hmm. and what their utility and approach in real life scenarios are. But this vision about distinguishing reality from fantasy, even if a character is a fantastic character, like a deer or a talking mouse, mm-hmm. or whatever it is, or a video game, I think it's important that we know that we are not interacting with a reality. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I'm going to back up to one word you said that's key. You use the word tools over and over. This is a tool, this is a tool. And I want to highlight that because I can't agree with you more, Marco. I think people view, they've seen too many episodes of, iRobot and the Terminator and all these artificial intelligence that come back and find that humanity is inferior and we're going to wipe them off the face of the earth. The reality is AI, even as sophisticated as it appears right now, is not really a full general purpose AI. We build tools that solve specific problems, very unique, very identifiable, very quantifiable specific problems. And we're doing the same thing. We're not trying to recreate a general human AI. We're trying to create a tool. I'm going to use your word again, not against you, for you, to support you. A tool that'll help take some of the repetitive, mundane elements that we as humans are required to utilize. And we'll get into some of these use cases, like let's take healthcare. We believe strongly in healthcare. Our healthcare system needs a lot of help. We've got labor shortages. There's, three open positions for every single resume out there and submission, and how do we improve our healthcare system? And, you take these digital personalities, and how do we remove some of the burden on the HCPs, the healthcare professionals, so that we can free up what you and I do as humans. We're creative, we're innovators, we can think, we can create from the ground up. We can not only solve problems, but AI is designed typically from the ground up with a set of rules, whether that's rules is automatically generated based on GPT, but they still have to populate the data, and it creates its own algorithms. But at the end of the day, it's still a sophisticated algorithm. What we're trying to do at PRSONAS is to play onto what you said about tools. We're trying to supply a tool to society that allows you to scale the human experience, not replace the human experience, but to scale that human experience, so that all this massive, wonderful technology that's running at a rapid pace right now is something that we can use in a practical sense, that we can communicate with, we can understand with. And so society will be able to get the benefit of this scaled human experience without everybody being AI data scientists. And that's an easier problem than people think, actually. I do. And I'm not saying my guys are the smartest on the planet, but they're pretty dang close. And we focus on that scaling piece. And it'd be interesting to get your take on what you've seen on use cases for this type of AI before I continue my ramble about how we've been successful in scaling that human experience in today's world. Where do you see AI and that human learning piece going?
Well, I go back to the tool. I keep saying, let's do it. Let's do it. I believe it's bringing so many advantages to our society. I mean, you talk the healthcare system, and when I hear people just bashing AI because they don't want it, I'm like, you understand that we are already using this, and it's already making our life a lot better, even if you don't know. I mean, you're landing safely on a plane and flying because of that.
Yes.
Healthcare, they can detect. I mean, it's the speed and the accuracy that they do this. But then we go to the sentient and to the creative mind, and I don't feel like they're going to take our place. It's like everybody's talking about Chat GPT now, and I'm like, well, people are like, well, the writers are going to lose their job. And I'm thinking, like, the bad writers probably will, because they're going to use it and don't change a thing, or even write lyrics for songs or music. I mean, there is the machine learning that create music now. But if you're good, I think you're okay.
I think it's even beyond that. I think it's going to improve the productivity. Take
Yes.
two interesting use cases I'll allude to. At one point in time, we were worried that computers were going to take a typist jobs away from them. But now it's an understood tool that improves the overall productivity of society. The old one I like to go, because it's a little more fun to bring out, is back when the stethoscope was first invented in healthcare. All the doctors thought it was a threat. You can't replace the human ear. The stethoscope's not as sensitive. You're going to destroy healthcare as we know it, because the stethoscope can't be used like a human ear. And you're going, well, wait. That's just a tool to improve your hearing perception. And now stethoscopes just standard practice. So if you fast forward,
you have one right on your,
Exactly. So to bring your point about we're not replacing humans, here's a real practical example that we've done. We've worked with RTI Institute with clinical trial and outcomes. Obviously, as we know, clinical trials, I shouldn't say obviously, I apologize. I'm not sure exactly who your audience is, but let's just take a 30-second review of what a clinical trial does. A clinical trial runs a series of tests, runs a series of experiments, and you're trying to specifically improve the health and wellness of the human population. Now, in order to get that in there, to get these trials done, they're incredibly time-consuming, incredibly expensive, takes a tremendous amount of labor, tremendous amount of dedication, a tremendous amount of education and background. But if we could just move a needle a little bit, there's so much in our healthcare system right now that is inefficient, let's be honest, and that is not as effective as it could be. So we've been able to take our characters and say, well, instead of having people try to track down a certain demographic that gets into a population of a clinical trial so that we can study this underserved community or this minority community, or let's say they're in a economic or social underserved community or disadvantaged community, they're very much like 3 to 10 times less likely to participate in a clinical trial. So if you want to reach those communities and you want to speed up the clinical trial process, improve outcomes so that we can improve healthcare for those communities, especially that are, multilingual, different genders, different races. We mentioned the deaf community. We're now able to use our digital personas or digital personalities to now go out and reach out to those individual patients and to give them a empathetic, trustworthy ear to talk to respond to engage with, and help that community form that trust and feel comfortable participating in these clinical trials. So that is something that's not taking anybody's job away from them. It's just using the power of this human engagement component you referred to, this, scalable human element, and being able to apply it to something that's very real, very practical, and has a positive impact. That engagement concept we talk about, you're more likely to engage as a gamer, as a, you mentioned your gaming background, my gaming background, how you react to some of these movie characters and all. So I only tell people, imagine if we could get people as comfortable, trustworthy, and I'm going to use the word addicted, and as addicted to their own health and well-being and their own patient advocacy on their healthcare journey that we could with this entertainment. You're in the middle of LA, you're right in the heart of electronic entertainment and CGI production. I'm an XEA gamer, and we know people go to movies, people go to Hollywood, people can play games. These are huge, and people are quite bluntly almost addicted to them. So why can't we do that with healthcare? Why can't we do that with customer service? Why can't we do that with things that are more beneficial than the entertainment value alone?
So I had some conversation in the past with people in the healthcare industry, actually a former CEO of a large Permanente group, for example, and we were talking about how, kind of what you said about the stethoscope, how the actual medical community, they are somehow refusing the innovation because they think they take their status away from them. It's like you can't trust the stethoscope, which now is the AI or machine learning. And I don't know. I mean, I think the truth is in the middle, meaning we need to understand that we're going to need both. But apart from the medical community, do you have some case studies of how the user perceive these changes? So I'm going to a healthcare facility, instead of talking to the person that welcomed me there, which may be moody and sometimes nice, sometimes not, I go to like a screen, right? And tell me if I'm understanding well, and I can get the appointment going, or I can do other things. How are people responding to this?
That's a great question, and one that quite honestly, we've been at this since 2013. I consider ourselves one of the probably top 3 to 5 leaders in the space, and we're unique in how we take our approach, and it's directly related to what you just asked. Because early on, quite honestly, we got a lot of the creepy factor. We got a lot of, one of my biggest pieces, and I'll admit the faults and the positives and the negatives, as we say, the good, bad, the ugly of what we've learned over the last 10 years. And one of those was the reluctance and the attempts of trying to get into recreating these humans and trying to be so in touch and in tune with what we believe people would want to communicate with and how realistic that character should be. We did probably defend ourselves on a monthly basis of, oh, you're just trying to take jobs, you're just trying to do that. But when we shifted gears a little and we changed our tagline to the digital personalities and focused on the personality of a human. What does it mean to be human, to your point? And when we found out it was less about the human replication, as a matter of fact, just a little bit of a side tangent, because I think it was interesting. You expressed a passion for Disney like I did. I do have to ask you, in your second title of your opening notes, you say it's a small world comet after all, and it's gotten even smaller technology. Is that a direct reference?
I think it came from that. I mean, it's McLuhan, it's Marshall McLuhan in the the media, the global village. But I think, it's a small world after all. It's definitely definitely from Disney. Yes.
So the reason I bring that up is because we were actually talking with Disney, and I was lucky enough to meet with one of the SVPs of Imagineering, a gentleman named John Snoddy, who I think just recently retired. But he had run a game company prior to joining Disney, and he was one of these guys that put faces on digital avatars inside of video games. I don't know his full background. I apologize. I don't tell you too much. But he saw the personas. At the time, we were delivering them on holographic displays, making them a wow factor, like the trade show. It was really like the attractor. What can we do? We did to your LA background. We did one of the back parties for Sony Pictures, where they would be greeted by this hologram and talk about some of the information on the film that they had produced and stuff like that. So they can act as those information readers. But John, Mr. Snoddy's the one that said, "Hey, time out, back up, guy. You're a little too close to human. You're creeping people out." And it's coming from Disney. He alluded to that directly. So over the years, as we've dumbed our characters down, and I shouldn't use that word. Let's just call them. I call them making them more approachable. But we've taken them away from that photorealistic piece. The reception of them has gone from now every time I'm turning around and defending myself on LinkedIn about why I'm not really trying to replace humans, people are starting to look at the engagement side of it, and they're really starting to be a little more trusty, a little more empathetic. There's even some clinical trials, if you have any patrons that are interested, in the psychology of these avatars and why the Disney-esque and why the more less photorealistic characters, we call them, and some of the ones we merge on the natural, and I'll get to that in a second, become more approachable, more empathetic. In the gaming space, we used to use the term suspension of disbelief, meaning you want to put somebody into a world, you want to put someone into an environment that there's nothing that's quote unquote out of place. When something's out of place, it takes you out of that reality, or it seems supernatural. The example I use to people is some of these horror movies you'll watch, and if you watch them, a body part that turns a little farther than it's put, or the exorcism when the head turns past the rotation natural. Yep. Anything that's just slightly off becomes creepy. Yep. And we're incredibly tuned to our conversation before the interview. We've been spending 2 billion years evolving the human form, and we've become intensely keen on what it means to look human and act human. And if you violate that for something that's human, it creeps you out. Disney gets away with it. We get away with it.
Well, I had no idea we were going to go in this direction. And I love it because I want to stay there for the time and reminding. So you talk about suspension of disbeliefs. And, I was actually reading about how you create this moment of fear or panic. And this is exactly that. If you break a bone, like in Stranger Things, the opposite, right? And that's like, whoa. Or if somebody is missing the step and he walks, the monster, the creature walks like a spider instead of like a human, or you move on the side. That's incredible. Yes. The things that you can do. So apart from that being fun and intelligent in terms of understanding the human nature and how we respond to this, that was exactly what I want to go deeper into, is this revelation that maybe make everything so anthropomorphic, so human, is what creeps us out.
Yes.
Because we're used to see a mouse that walk and sing and resolve things, and rabbits, and we're okay with that because we're in another world. And I give you another example. My wife, she likes to watch all the mystery and serial killer stuff, and and I'm not a big fan, but I do love I watched the Wednesday, the Addams Family spin-off.
Good.
And there is some kind of weird stuff going on. I'm a big fan of, The Nightmare Before Christmas, but I get away because I'm in another world. I'm in a fantasy world, and I know that I'm not dealing with real psycho. There's still psycho maybe, but you're in another place. So I say this because if I go to a booth, for example, to a kiosk, and the person that greets me is not too human, but it's, I don't know, maybe he's a rabbit with the kids. Like maybe he's in a kid office, or maybe it is a very funny character. Why do we need to anthropomorphize everything? Why do the robot need to look human? Can either be a cube? There are cubes.
Yep.
So isn't that more the way to go so that we can distinguish this is not human, but is having a function in our society?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because there's justification for both extremes. And there's a really curious study. I'm happy to forward you after the podcast, Marco, because you might find it intriguing with your psychology background. There's a clinical trial that shows when something is too inanimate, you don't have a trust. You don't believe there's an intelligence behind it. You believe it's a machine. When you're too realistic, you creep people out and think that there's something supernatural going on. Reality is the avatars that have a human appearance and a slightly more what we'll call natural human appearance, but that are at the right level of realism, then become comfortable. They become trustworthy. They become what we call approachable. They become they can express the empathy and emotion and expression to you. And as we go back to the old Disney, and it's funny you said Nightmare Before Christmas, because I love that one as well. But those characters could emote, and you believe the emotion in them, even though they would stop motion. So there's a reality in my mind that we find in the gaming space, that you hit that point of not too inanimate, that it's not believable or not credible or doesn't appear to have an intelligence behind it, or not too much. And that level is that fine balance that I'm going to call it, for those audience members that are familiar with the term uncanny valley. It's this concept, and I'll try to draw it in the air here. The more photorealistic something gets, the more believable it is. But once you hit a point and it's too accurate, physiologically speaking, it drops off like a cliff. And then once it goes through that valley and comes up, and I go, okay, wait, that is real. That is Marco. He is a real person. Now I get back on some of that trust band. So we're driving that line up to that cliff to make it as believable as possible without taking people over that cliff, over that uncanny valley journey. And that's a balance, and that only comes from experience. And the experience we've learned, and where I believe my approach and PRSONAS' approach to this problem is excelling and learn from, quite honestly, is early military simulation, is gaming. We've been able to create a gaming society that makes believable characters. And it boils down to the one word: engagement. How do you engage people? Everything from that trust and all this engagement. I'll give one more anecdotal story of why I'm 100% convinced we're taking the right approach to stop what you were just alluding to, which is that distrust, that creepiness, that, okay, you're just trying to replace humans. There's a definite distrust with certain approaches to digital humans. And that's the trade shows. We've done hundreds of trade shows. These are great information disseminated from, you were asking about practical application. Tell me about your product. Hey, can you do this? Can you do that? These things, as you know, can be trained with thousands of questions if you have to. A lot of content, but it goes there. But if you walked into this trade show, we were at a trade show in downtown Raleigh, and if I was to knock your iPhone off of your desk and crack the screen, the first thing I'm going to do is turn and go, oh, Marco, I'm so sorry. I broke your iPhone. Here, let me pay for it. We had a gentleman that Daphne, we call her Daphne. Everybody creates their own personality. Our PRSONAS is called Daphne. So Daphne was at the top of the escalator greeting people when they came up. Somebody wasn't paying attention and their kid was running off somewhere, and they bumped into Daphne. And PRSONAS Daphne started toddling a little bit. She didn't fall over, but she physically got bumped, and the guy turned to see that it was Daphne, and I was standing at the booth next to him answering questions. He said nothing to me. He turned to Daphne and went, "Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize," and then stabilized her and walked off. And that shows you he wasn't creeped out by her. He wasn't intimidated by her. He really subconsciously, catching that glimpse of this human, believed that there was somebody there that was bumped. And that the psychology of that's amazing to me.
Yeah, it is. I have a creepy story too, which is not that creepy, but I was in RSA conference, the security conference that is usually in San Francisco, but they have a Singapore one as well. And 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, one of the keynote was the Sophia, the robot.
Yes.
It's creepy.
Transparent head. Well, they do the whole brain, that they cut her skull and make it transparent. Yeah, that's
it's creepy. And it's kind of like, okay, you're trying to be too real. And then you go on the side and it's like, wait a minute, then there your head is cut off and I can see the inside, which get that creepy level.
Bingo. It's like a RoboCop movie. Remember the old RoboCop movie?
Yeah, but I also, to wrap this side of the conversation, I had as a guest on one of my shows, one of the person that had been working in creating her personality, which she's actually a comedian that works with a team because they felt like bringing humor, for example, in the way that she interact. And I say she, but it's Sophia, but whatever it is.
Referring to her as a she.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because that's what it looks like. You know, I refer to Siri as a she, and I don't know why we're still there. But anyway, the point is that there is all these nuances of using that, blurring that line where it's like, how human do you make it? Yeah. I mean, if you even make jokes, but then something doesn't appear human because it's not there yet, it's not passing the Turing test yet, you're really going to freak out. But if I'm talking with, again, I say a rabbit or a frog or whatever it is, or something that is more of an alien, and it's okay. I think it is more okay.
It is. And I'm going to highlight a piece we did with CBHA, the Columbia Health Basin, just between Seattle and Spokane. And there's a population up there, and it's going to play directly into what you're saying, because we talk about focusing on the personality that whatever target audience, whatever your demographic, whatever your target audience is, you want them to be comfortable and get the value and information and to be comfortable engaging with this technology. And then I'll get to an Infocom talk I said earlier about some of those stats behind you were asking about how people react. But in any sense, we were up there and there's this community that's served, and they speak a not very popular language called Mixteca, which is a language that Siri doesn't speak, Microsoft Cortana doesn't speak, Alexa doesn't speak. But because of the tools of AI and such, and this population would come into these hospitals, or this one hospital in particular, and try to get served because they had health issues. They were, migratory or agricultural workers, and they needed support. And they weren't able to always get where they wanted to go efficiently. So they would always try to hire staff, translators, people from the community, and they would try to address this population. So they hired us, and we worked with them over a collaborative period of a couple of years. And we taught Daphne, their version was, I think they called her Olivia. So we created Olivia, and Olivia worked on what we call our personality engine. So she was medical, so she had to have straight lace. So they helped work on how the scripts would go. We worked on teaching Olivia how to speak Mixteca and how to listen to Mixteca. And then we used our personality engine to create a personality that had some of the same facial shape. And in that society, like most societies, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but there's a much better trust factor. About 75% of women and men trust female personalities, which is why Siri is female, which is why our Daphnes tend to be female. So in any sense, we took a typical population. So we started building up this personality, and that personality was deployed at this hospital that had, everything from healthcare, optometrists, dental, and they could walk in the door, be greeted in a very trusting fashion. And it wasn't stealing somebody's job, they couldn't have a receptionist sitting out there 24/7 trying to greet these people. And they would greet them and give them information. Hey, if you're here for your eye appointment, you go over here. If you're here for this, you go upstairs. If you're here for imaging, here's how you get to the imaging lab. And they were able to do that. So then the hospital staff could focus on that high value patient care that we as humans are great at. And I think people need to start, to your point, going all the way back to the tools. That's an example of what we were just talking about with the engagement and the creepy factor, but it's practical. And that was done, probably 5 or 6 years ago. This is not something that's 10 years out. It's something we need to really, to your point, embrace and understand and deploy in something that's mutually beneficial for everyone. And I think that's possible.
Yeah. No, I think you did a perfect connection back to where we started, which saved me a lot of time from going there. As we're the 40 minutes of conversation, which I didn't even realize was going so fast, because it's really fascinating. And like I said, it's really different from what I imagined, but I truly enjoyed it because we ended up talking about storytelling, character creation, Disney, artificial intelligence, of course, and machine learning. And I think that I agree with you. I mean, in the long run, I just look at how now I can literally translate in 25 languages, something that I wrote, and that happened quickly. I was in Japan 2 months ago talking about using characters, like cartoonish characters, crazy over there. And how with my phone, I could translate just by taking the camera on something in Japanese, which other than, arigato and a few other things, I don't know. But look at that. Is it stealing somebody's job? No, I don't have a personal translator with me, but it's definitely something that is a tool that I think it can be very, very useful when you need an information and you can't put it out there. So huge leaps in what technology has become, I think, in the past 10, 25 years. And we don't even need to go that back. But I enjoy. I mean, that was a good stroll in some creative aspect of technology that you walk us through. So thank you, Chuck. I appreciate it.
I do appreciate your time, Marco.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, and as I close, if you have any resources, stuff that is ungated that you want to share, some books or publication and data, send it to me and I'll put it in the notes of the podcast. And again, people can get in touch with you, learn more about you, and maybe ask you some creepy question too. Who knows? Never know.
I love the debate. I like the naysayers as well as the as we call it, the Kool-Aid drinkers. It makes you think, makes you guess everything, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And as I always say, I want to thank everybody for listening. And if you have more questions now than when you started listening to this, we did a good job. I want people to question things. So absolutely. Thank you again, Chuck. Thanks everybody for listening, and stay tuned for Redefining Society Podcast on ITSPmagazine, and I'll catch with you next time.
Wonderful. Take care.
Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you learned something new and this story made you think, then share ITSP Magazine with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our columns. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.